This, boys and girls, is an SM57, and this is the clear industry standard for recording guitar cabinets. This is the king of guitar microphones, and we all love it and use it, don't get me wrong. But you know what? There's so much more out there. There are so many great alternatives. You just gotta find the right mics and know how to use them correctly. Today, I wanna show you how I use both ribbon and condenser microphones, not for blending, as my main microphones for great but different sounding high gain guitar tones. I wanna show you how to choose the right microphone, how to place it correctly, and how to EQ it to get a great tone that sounds different from this. Let's go! But let's talk about the 57 for a minute. There are two reasons, or maybe three reasons, why this is the industry standard. The third reason is simply that, we're just used to that sound. It has been used for decades and we're just used to it, and that's why we like it. So that's the third reason. The other two reasons are, first of all, it has a frequency response that just makes it perfect for being put close to a guitar speaker. It doesn't have a huge low end and it doesn't have a massive proximity effect. And the low end just seems to be like big enough if you get really close. It just works. Compared to a condenser microphone, which has a more linear low end and that can get boomy, or compared to a ribbon mic with a figure of 8 pattern, which has a much more prominent proximity effect, this just seems to work when you put it really close. Additionally, it has a certain frequency presence bump that just makes the guitars sound very much in your face and kind of like mix ready right from the start. But there's another reason. You might be surprised, but I call the SM57 a smooth sounding microphone. It sounds direct, it has all the presence you need, but compared to most other dynamic microphones, it has a certain smoothness. It never sounds hard in the upper mids around 2 kilohertz. There are a lot of so-called modern or better 57s out there that other brands have released. Audix, SE Electronics, Heil, and many more have released dynamic microphones that are superior to the 57. And to me, they all introduce a certain hardness in the upper mids, and that's why I hardly use them on guitars. Don't get me wrong, those microphones are great. And for example, on drums, I'm not using 57s anymore. A V7X sounds so much better than a 57 on a snare. Or Audix D2s on toms, I prefer that. Those mics typically have neodymium magnets. They just have a different transient response, and I think that's where the difference comes from. This mic has a certain smoothness, even if you throw like really nasty guitar tones at it. Today, I want to introduce you to two microphones, one ribbon and one condenser, that I have been using for many years, and they both sound great on guitar cabinets if you use them right. Let's start with the condenser mic. This one comes from Latvia. This one is the JZ V11. It's actually their most affordable microphone, and I bought it, more than 10 years ago. It is their darkest sounding microphone, and for me it has always been like a condenser mic with a ribbon frequency response. It sounds great on any harsh source. So it's good for guitars. I've used it very often for harsh vocals, for screaming. It's a nice alternative to the SM7B, actually, if you're looking for a condenser mic that can take the most evil and spitty and raspy vocals, and it's quite affordable. So that is our first contender, the V11 from JZ Microphones in Latvia. Now, let's go to the other side of the Atlantic. Let's go to Pasadena, and let me introduce you the other contender, which is my favorite ribbon microphone for recording guitars. And this is the AEA R92, a passive ribbon that not only looks great, but it just has like an awesome smoothness that no other ribbon microphone has for me. People use Royers on guitars. I never liked them. I really like the R92. You might remember a video, I'll put a link here, where I compared I think 4 or 5 different AEA ribbon microphones on guitars, and this one really stood out for me. Also compared to the more modern sounding AEA ribbon mics, because this one, just like the 57, has the smoothness. Now, both microphones, the JZ and the AEA, work well on guitars because they don't introduce that hardness to me. But they need some EQ and they need the right placement. So let's get started. The placement of those microphones is actually very easy. You just want to put them right at the center of your dust cap of the speaker, right in the middle, because that is where you pick up the most high frequencies. As we will see, compared to a 57, those mics don't have the presence boost and they need high frequencies anyway. Now, how close should you get? That depends on the proximity effect of the microphone you're using. So with the AEA, which has a pretty prominent proximity effect, I move it further away. You can play with that. Remember that the further you go away, the less low end you will have. So if it sounds too boomy, you might want to move it away a little bit. The setup's pretty simple. I'm sending a DI track from Cubase through a radial reamping box into my Brunetti Extra Lead, and this is going down in my live room into a Driftwood 4x12 loaded with Eminence Carnivore speakers. And by the way, both the pre-order of the Carnivore and the Carnivore IR pack are coming next week. Get ready. 4th of July, maybe? Get ready, okay? IR pack, pre-order of the speaker. If you're interested in the Carnivore, get ready. So this is my DI track playing here in Cubase. And here you can see a bunch of microphones. So let's just start with listening to a 57. So this is our standard tone, a 57 miking a Carnivore. Sounds nice. Now let's have a listen to our other microphones. This is the AEA ribbon. And this is the condenser. And this sounds a lot darker and maybe less mix ready compared to the 57. And that's why people usually go for a 57, because it's easy. But wait a minute, there's something I want to show you. Here's my trick. This is what I do with those microphones. I will typically EQ them so they sound like 57s, which is not going to happen. They're going to sound very different still. But I EQ them like into the 57 ballpark. But they will still maintain a very different character and a different texture. And for some reason, I always do this with analog EQs. I've tried to do this in the box with FabFilter, but maybe because the moves are too extreme or something, it always feels weird. So I usually do this with an analog EQ right after the mic pre. What we got here is two mic pre's coming from Harrison, wonderful sounding mic pre's. Those mic pre's also have a high cut filter, which we will need. And then we're going into a Harrison EQ as well. Sometimes I also use a Pultec, but today we're going to use at least two bands and the low cut filter down here of the Harrison. Let's do that now. So let's start with the AEA ribbon and let's see what I can do. First thing you want to do is you want to get the low end under control. So let's activate the low cut filter, which is very extreme. And you want to pull out just enough low end so the palm mutes are not boomy anymore. Sounds good. As I've told you, I've already pulled back the AEA microphone a little bit, so there's not too much oomph in there. Now, here's the main move. We want to imitate the presence boost of the 57. And you can use a bell filter, but it actually works pretty well with a combination of a high cut and a shelf filter. So this is a shelf filter, high shelf filter of the Harrison. And what I do is I will start at the very highest frequency and just push it. Let's turn it on. And then I will lower the frequency of the high shelf band more and more. And I will do that until I reach a point where I feel like things start sounding edgy and kind of hard. Around here it gets nasty. But this is very nice. And we're pushing something like 10 or, no, it's 10 dB here. This is a lot, but it sounds very natural if you ask me. Let's compare before and after. Okay, now I want to play with the high cut filter here in the preamp, just to remove some of that very high sizzle that the high shelf introduces. And 10 dB is maybe a little too much. Let's hear this in the mix. And I would call this a very mid-rangey, juicy vocal guitar tone. Sounds really cool. Let's compare this to the 57. So you see they're equally bright now, and they sound equally in your face, but still very different. So the 57 is more scooped in the mids. You could try to make the AA more 57-ish by pulling out some lower mids like this. But I actually enjoy the mids of the AA. Sounds juicy and nice. Let's go back to where we started. So what we learn is don't be afraid of EQ, right? This is a very cool alternative to the 57, just as usable, sounds great in the mix. Let's do the same thing with the condenser mic. So we can hear a lot of low end. Why? Yes, the JZ, the condenser mic, has a more linear and deep extended low end compared to the 57. It's also very close, so we have the proximity thing going on. So let's start with the low cut filter. And here I'm going a little higher. By the way, I don't care about the frequencies really, I just use my ears. Now let's tweak the high end again. Let's imitate the presence boost of the 57 one more time. I think we don't need as much here because this microphone has more higher frequencies than the ribbon. And again, this is a shelving. You can also switch this to a bell, but it sounds too aggressive for me. This is better. This is the highest frequency again, so I'm gonna roll this down until I feel it gets a little too edgy. And maybe let's leave this fully pushed and adjust the high cut filter first. Nice. Get rid of all the sizzle. And now let's reduce the high frequency boost a little bit. And this is a very thick and full sounding tone, if you ask me. Let's have a listen in the mix. And now let's compare it to both the 57 and the ribbon mic. 57. And once again, we have achieved the same aggression that the 57 has, but this sounds more linear, has a totally different mid-range than this. But it also sounds very different from the AEA, JZ. AEA. Let's compare them in the mix. And this is all very much usable. We have quickly dialed in like 2 alternatives to the 57, and they all have a different character, but they all kind of work in the mix. And now it's a pure matter of taste. That's what I would call it. Okay, so before we have a listen to all 3 microphones in the mix, let me just say this. I hope this was an inspiration to you to try other microphones than just the 57. This could be because you're really looking for a different guitar tone. This could be because you want to blend 2 guitar tones and just looking for something that one tone that contrasts the other. Different microphones really, really help here. And again, don't be afraid of EQ. Using a good EQ like the Harrison really helps. And doing this in the analog domain is really fun. Because, you know, I feel like if you commit during the sound check, it's a lot better than having to worry about this later. I prefer like dialing in a tone, touching the knobs, getting it right, and then recording one signal. I also don't like recording like several microphones. I just blend them all at once and record them into one track. And yeah, and if you fiddle around with an analog EQ, you just go really extreme. If it sounds right, you use your ears, and that's very, very good. So what you want to do now is go through your mic locker. I'm sure you have some vocal microphones or some drum microphones, some other condenser or ribbon microphones that you've never tried on guitars. Try them now. What you're looking for is a microphone with a smooth sounding mid-range that can take an EQ like this well. I can tell you the AEA R92 and the JZ V11 are fantastic mics for this. Links below, by the way. Both really cool, both with a different character. But I'm sure there are more mics. These are just the 2 mics that I usually go for. So enjoy, you know, going through your mic locker and finding a secret weapon that nobody has used before. Now it's time to have a listen to those 3 microphones in the mix. You let me know which one you prefer. You let me know in the comments which mics you want to try or which mics you have tried. I'm getting lost here. Watch out for the Carnivore pre-order and Carnivore IR pack release on July the 4th next week. Thanks for watching. I see you in hell, motherfuckers. Bye-bye.